The Federal Digital Service spawned lookalikes in several agencies over the years, among them NASA, an agency that already had heavy technology chops. For a look inside NASA's digital service, we turn to its team leader, Sean Chittle, who joins me in studio. Sean, good to have you with us.
So great to be here, Tom. Thank you.
And give us a quick review. This has been around a couple of years, but it's still fairly new among the digital services.
Yes, so digital transformation is where we get our funding, and Jill Marlowe is the Chief Digital Transformation Officer out of the OCIO, Office of Chief Information Officer at NASA. And a couple years ago, she had the idea for this digital SWAT team, okay? And as a result, she hired Tracy Bierman out of Kennedy Space Center as her first hire, and then he set out to build this team, and I was his first hire in January of 23. We didn't like the term SWAT team, so we looked around and we thought, well, Sean, you came from the U.S. Digital Service. Why don't we try a digital service here at NASA? And that's where it was born.
And by the way, as the team lead, you are the co-founder.
Yes, I'm the co-founder with Tracy Bierman, and we're kind of a flat organization, so I'm not really the lead of it. We're just all kind of have our own departments, our own missions.
All right, but you get along with each other.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, and what are the goals for NASA's digital service?
Well, we want to accelerate missions. And we do so by bringing human-centered design and advanced modern digital techniques to the agency, whether it's missions, projects, or the different mission support organizations that are out there.
Well, I mean, when you think of organizational change, you think of the applications and the systems that are used generally by everyone. Say it's grant making or this type of thing. How do you get involved in the missions? I mean, those are pretty closely husbanded activities filled with people that know precisely what they're trying to accomplish, whether it's something having to do with aeronautics here on Earth or spaceflight.
Yeah, at first we kind of started with the normal HR type projects, Agency Business Solution. We worked on that and some other key internal things. And then, believe it or not, Artemis found us. And I've been working with that team down at Kennedy to accelerate the mission testing platform. They're using a kludge of PowerPoint, Word, Visio, all the different things that government is very familiar with. And they're like, hey, can we design a testing platform to get us to the moon faster? And I'm like, sure, happy to do it. So they're the subject matter experts in spacecraft, and I'm the subject matter expert in how to do digital. And us together are making a really cool product for the government.
I guess it's a little shocking that something as advanced as Artemis is still using slide rules when it comes to the digital component.
Well, they're not using slide rules, but we're very heavy.
Spreadsheets, for example, is the digital equivalent of the slide rule, I think, nowadays.
Sure, government runs on Excel, Tom, so there's a lot of that stuff, but there are some very modern practices happening, and we're just trying to accelerate those.
And tell us about the organization. How many people do you have? Where are you physically located, if you are, or scattered?
Yeah, we're distributed. There's 4 of us total. Tracy and I hired 2 people, a service designer and a product designer. One's in Milwaukee and one's in Bangor, Maine. And so we work remotely over Teams.
4 of you for something as scattered as NASA. Sounds like you're more trainers than developers.
Well, we work pretty hard. We get a lot of work done, but because we work in really modern, agile ways, we can kind of compress timelines. We don't like to do things over, say, 3 months.
Well, let's go back to that example of Artemis. You were trying to update the dashboard, if you will, for lack of a better word, that the scientists and engineers getting that mission going see when they put all the data related to testing and so forth, flight dynamics, together. So how did that happen? How can a couple of people do that? Or are you mainly a contracting purchaser?
Well, I mean, so the team down there is amazing, the testing platform team, and Paul Douglas and the rest of his team are just awesome. They originally had this 50-page document spec, and that's kind of how the way the government runs. And I'm not saying that documentation and specs are wrong, but we took a human-centered approach to this. So I opened up a platform called Mural, not Miro, but Mural, which is FedRAMP and what NASA uses, and we started sketching the ideas of how this testing platform, which we call Archimedes Lever, is going to work. And they're like, oh, let's put this here, let's put that there. And of course, most people can't design, all that well. So I take their ideas and then I repurpose them in an application called Figma, which then lets them prototype and see what they're going to get. And they're like, yeah. And they're super excited and they can't wait to have this thing done. And we're using the Microsoft Power App platform to do that.
So Figma and Mural, these are commercial products also that you're just helping funnel them into.
Yes. So Figma is just getting their ATO from the government, whereas Mural has had an ATO for a while, Authority to Operate. I want to use acronyms.
And are these workflow systems? What are they exactly?
They're 21st century Photoshop, to use a term. It's a way for them to see the product so they can say, yes, that's what I want. They can try it, they can test it, they can prototype it. Then we can go build it, and we know what we're building is the right thing.
Does this have elements of CAD and engineering also in there?
No, it's not that rigorous. It's moving around checkboxes and buttons and things like that and showing screens and displays that make sense to them.
Interesting. We're speaking with Sean Chittle. He is the team leader for NASA's digital service. And Artemis is gigantic. I mean, NASA is riding on it in some ways. It's public and something that gets a lot of scrutiny. But NASA has hundreds of programs going throughout the space centers and labs and so forth. There's 4 of you. Does the demand for the services exceed what you can do, and how do you prioritize?
That's a great question. So we do have a triage process, our own little intake, where we spend about a half an hour with a customer and ask them some key questions. We go over their work, and we say, this is a good fit for us. We can do this the next few months or a few weeks. If not, we can come back to you later. We are a pilot. I was told to make sure I had told you that, and that we are looking for our permanence within the OCIO, and that news will be coming out later. I'm sure Jill will be happy to talk to you about that. But for now, we are 4 people. We are looking to scale.
And getting back to the question of Mural and Figma as an example, did those exist? Were there licenses for them already in Artemis? Or is that something that you're going to kind of carry and fit everything into in the next rounds of projects? How does that work?
So OCIO pays for that, for Mural and for Figma, and the missions get that benefit as, organizations that we support. Power App Platform has got some exciting news. I mean, we're going to be hopefully granting more licenses to more people. We are kind of doubling down on this low-code, no-code platform, which allows us to get out of the Excel and PowerPoint and into more application-based solutions.
And can the people on the projects that are doing the project, do they have the skills, or can they acquire the skills to reorient that data and that spreadsheet information into these platforms themselves?
Sure. So there's a different spectrum of knowledge that you need to have for Power App Platform. Sometimes you can click and make it work. Other times you're going to need a designer like myself to kind of walk you through and help you build it. And we have contractors as well that are going to do that. And Microsoft is also contributing that to that as
right.
well.
So there is a contractor component
yes.
for different projects.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about you, Sean, yourself. You mentioned you came from the U.S. Digital Service.
Yes.
Tell us more about your background, how you came to the job you have now.
Well, Tom, it's a funny story. I was living in New York and just fine, and then COVID happened, and I thought, wow, this is pretty strange. And the White House contacted me and said, hey, we're looking for digital service experts. Would you want to come and work for us? And I said, sure, I'd heard of you. So the first thing I did in my federal career in 2020 was the COVID task force out of the White House, which was pretty wild to see. I then left and went over to the Pentagon to do the Defense Digital Service when, of course, the Afghan exfil was happening, and then later Ukraine. I left and did that. And then I went to the Department of Justice, where they put me in the fentanyl crisis. So I've just had a pretty wild experience. At NASA, I haven't had any major problems like that. Just been an awesome agency to work for. In fact, 11 years running, best place to work in federal government.
Yeah, and so where were you before the White House? Because they don't call everybody up and say, golly,
yeah,
they've never called me.
Yeah, I was at Zillow, making sure people could rent their apartments in New York. And it's a dream job because you could see all that kind of stuff. But really, I was ready for something in federal service. I've been wanting to serve my country for a long time. And I'm happy to do it. In fact, my grandfather was in the Air Mobility Command in World War II, and I actually worked in the Air Mobility Command at the Pentagon for a while. So a bit of a legacy there.
Yeah, so how do you find the government? Can you get things done quickly, do you find? Because the average Fed finds things that take forever. And if you can do 2 things in a 5-year stint there, you've done a lot.
It's leadership. We have great top cover in the OCIO and at NASA, and they say, here's our problem. Can you go do this? And they mostly let us kind of run our show and let us do that. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy in the last 2 years of the amount of things that we've gotten done, and there's only just more to do. We are bureaucracy hackers. We try to, knock down bureaucracy and fight it where we can, but we also work within a system, and we want to make sure everyone's respected.
Right, sure. And I guess my question is, to what extent is experience at one place useful in another? Because you're not a senior executive. Career senior executives, the original design of that program was that they were program or agency agnostic and could take their skills from place to place. It didn't work out that way, but that was the original model of it. But you're one of those people that seems to